Here's what's been happening lately. 3 things. First, Chicago cab fares are going up 20% as City Council tries to lift up the taxi industry. Next, Chicago's school board election is this November, and voters will be able to elect all 21 members of the Chicago School Board for the first time. Lastly, City Council is turning up the heat to find a replacement for ShotSpotter. Let's break it all down. First up, Chicago's cab fares are going up 20%. The City Council agreed last Wednesday to throw a sorely needed lifeline to Chicago's shrinking taxicab industry at the expense of cab riders. Without a word of debate, the council agreed to raise taxicab fares by 20%, the first increase in a decade, to help cab drivers struggling to compete with Uber and Lyft amid skyrocketing gasoline prices and increasing insurance, maintenance, and vehicle replacement costs. Downtown Alderman Brandon Reilly of the 42nd Ward cast the only dissenting vote, even after acknowledging that the taxicab industry has been eviscerated by ride-hailing services, to protest what he called rampant abuse by cab drivers who fail to pull the flag to start the meter when a passenger enters the cab. The fare hike was introduced by Mayor Brandon Johnson last fall, while public attention was focused on the battle over his 2026 budget. It had languished in a committee ever since, until Wednesday. The mayor's plan would maintain the cost of entering a cab, known as the flag pull, at $3.25 for the first 1/9 of a mile, but provide a substantial relief for cab drivers in other ways. That includes a $2.50 rush hour fee for riders between 3 p.m. and 7 p.m., a $1 overnight fee for riders between 8 p.m. and 6 a.m., and increased charges for both time and distance. Instead of 25 cents for each additional 1/9 of a mile, passengers would pay 31 cents. Another 31 cents would be tacked on to the fare for every 45 seconds instead of 20 cents for every 36 seconds. Shared rides for a minimum of 2 passengers would also rise from $24 to $30 from O'Hare Airport to downtown or McCormick Place, and from $18 to $22 from Midway Airport to downtown or the Convention Center. The cost of shared rides between Midway and O'Hare would rise from $37 to $45. The cost of cleaning a cab after an inebriated or unruly rider would double from $50 to $100. Next, the Chicago School Board election is coming. Soon, voters will elect all 21 members of the Chicago School Board for the first time. It's a significant shift for the governing body, which was under mayoral control for decades. The city held its first ever school board elections in 2024, but that year only 10 seats were up for grabs. The rest, including the board president, were appointed by Mayor Brandon Johnson. The change marks the culmination of years of work by advocates who pushed for an elected board, arguing that it would inject democracy and community voice into the board's decision-making. Though there are concerns that big money expected to flow in this year's race will undermine that. There's also gaps in voter awareness to overcome. 2 out of 3 Chicago residents didn't know the board would become fully elected, according to a poll by the nonprofit Kids First Chicago, and many voters don't know exactly what the school board does. Here's what you need to know about the board's responsibilities and what to expect in the elections later this year. What does the board actually do? The board has several responsibilities, including opening and closing schools, hiring and evaluating the CPS CEO, approving the budget and school calendar and vendor contracts, and deciding which school buildings get upgrades. They meet at least twice a month at their headquarters in the Loop and can expect to spend potentially more than 30 hours a month on their duties, according to the board website. But members aren't paid to serve on the board. Some have raised concerns that lack of compensation discourages parents from low-income households from representing their communities. The board also sets academic goals and priorities for the school year. That means members spend time attending community events, hosting office hours, and visiting schools to get a sense of what their constituents want. How will the election work? For the upcoming election on November 3rd, the city has been divided into 20 sub-districts. Residents will vote for one candidate to represent the area they live, but everyone will be able to vote for the school board president, which is a citywide seat. Candidates who win for seats currently held by appointed members will serve 2-year terms. Those who win seats currently held by elected members will serve 4-year terms. The board president will serve for 4 years. From there on, elections will be held every 2 years, so only half the seats are up for election at a time. Lastly, the city council is turning up the heat to find a replacement for ShotSpotter. Opposition city council members are demanding hearings to determine why Chicago is headed into another summer without the crime-fighting tool known as ShotSpotter. Shortly after taking office, Mayor Brandon Johnson got rid of the controversial gunshot detection system he denounced as a walkie-talkie on a stick to honor a campaign promise to his progressive supporters who view the technology as costly, ineffective, and a contributor to over-policing in Black and brown communities where the majority of gun violence occurs. A defiant city council then empowered Chicago Police Superintendent Larry Snelling to sign a new contract with ShotSpotter, but Johnson declared the ordinance illegal, even after negotiating a costly extension to retain the technology through the 2024 Democratic National Convention in Chicago. Johnson then launched an open competition to replace the gunshot detection technology. Sound Thinking, the company that owns ShotSpotter, was one of 8 firms that responded to the so-called request for information by the September 20, 2024 deadline. Nothing has happened since then, even though the last 2 city budgets set aside a combined $13.9 million for the replacement technology. Now ShotSpotter's leading proponents, Public Safety Committee Chair Brian Hopkins of the 2nd Ward, Alderman Peter Chigo of the 10th Ward, and a former Chicago police officer and Alderman Derek Curtis of the 18th Ward are turning up the heat. They introduced a resolution at Wednesday's City Council meeting to examine delays and missed deadlines to replace the acoustic gunshot detection system that was once an intrinsic part of Chicago's crime-fighting technology. The hearing would also examine what resolution sponsors called protracted delays in implementing a records management system to improve data collection, analysis, and officer oversight, including an early intervention system to identify at-risk behavior.